going to start my speech now. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to talk about a word that gets batted around very often. The word is stress. If you go to any website these days, whether that's an obscure fitness website or the mainstream media such as the BBC, you will be bombarded by information about stress, about how to avoid it, how to manage it, how it can cause burnout, how it can affect mental health, and so on. But we have to remember that what we're talking about in these cases is really chronic stress, because our bodies have their own physiological stress mechanisms that are there to actually help us. They're there to protect us, to keep us safe, to even just to wake us up. So I'm going to talk about stress from a hormonal perspective today, and how by optimizing the timing and the production of certain stress hormones, we can actually optimize our energy and immune function. But firstly, what's the aim? What's the reason for all of this? Well, I think for most people, in terms of energy, we want to have bounds of energy during the day, have it drop in the evening, and then have a nice restful night's sleep. And I think in terms of sickness, I mean, no one likes to get ill. So we want to have a strong immune system that is able to ward off any infections. Furthermore, the better our health is, the more energy we have, the happier we're going to be in general. And that's true as well for the opposite, because being sick and having low energy doesn't only affect the individual, but it actually affects society in general. According to a 2017 study, UK employees lose about 30.4 days of work every year due to sickness or sickness-related underperformance. And this amounts to about £73 billion every year for the UK economy. So what can we do naturally to optimize our energy and immune system? It turns out that there are two pretty important players when it comes to regulating these aspects. We're talking about cortisol and adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is also called epinephrine or epinephrine when it is produced in the brain, but they're basically interchangeable. So firstly, what are cortisol and adrenaline? As for cortisol, it is a steroid hormone, much like testosterone or estrogen. And that means that it's derived from a precursor molecule, which in this case is, which is cholesterol, which is what I was trying to get out of my mouth there. As for adrenaline, adrenaline is maybe what we think about when we hear about the fight or flight mechanism in our body. We might think of an early human being chased by a lion. But according to scientists, adrenaline can actually be our best friend when it comes to immunity, neuroplasticity, learning, and memory. So how are these hormones produced in the body? As for cortisol, the brain secretes a releasing hormone, as it's called, which sends a signal to the adrenal glands and basically tells the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. When cortisol is produced in the body, we want to move, we don't want to rest, and we don't want to eat, at least not at first. As for adrenaline, when we come up against some sort of stressor, for example, if we have a cut or a wound, there's a message sent to our neurons in our body, and this basically secretes or basically triggers the secretion of adrenaline. When adrenaline is secreted, our breath increases, our heart rate, some blood vessels are restricted while others are dilated, for example, arteries or blood vessels that go into the main organs. And in fact, this is actually one of the reasons why our hands and feet can go cold when we're stressed, because all the blood is going to our main organs. So how can cortisol and adrenaline impact on our well-being? Well, the first aspect that we've got to think about is that every 24 hours, there is a surge in cortisol in our bodies. The aim of this surge is really to help us with the transition from night to day. Therefore, it has to happen as early in the day as possible, as close to waking as possible. So the first tip that I can give you would be, as soon as possible when you wake up, try to go outside or at least open a window and get some natural sunlight. You want to view the natural sunlight without sunglasses. Now, of course, don't look directly into the sun, and it's okay if it's a bit overcast, if there are some clouds. And depending on the brightness, you could maybe look for 5 to 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. 30 minutes or maybe an hour if it's a very grey day in Brussels. And by doing this, you will help to regulate your circadian rhythm. And this will also prevent a late shift in cortisol, which is often associated with mental health issues and insomnia. The second aspect that I'd like to talk about is that throughout the day, we come up against all kinds of stressful things. Okay, it might be work or family or anything. But the key is that these increases in stress or these increases in cortisol and adrenaline should be short, brief, because in fact, this is actually healthy. Now, we know that we often talk about avoiding chronic stress, and that's why it is important that these short, brief bouts of stress do not become chronic, but rather we just learn how to manage these short bouts of stress. And in fact, just knowing that it's normal to have these short bouts of stress could actually help in itself. Now, there are a number of practices and protocols that exist to deal with stress and to increase the threshold for stress. And that's what I'll go into more in my second speech. Thank you.